Jews are a nation formed around an ideology of love. That's the state of humanity. The virus is one milestone on the way to hitting the ground really hard. Jews play a role, not in spreading the virus, that's a stupid notion, but in being agents of change, agents of connection. Why it's going to erupt every time there's some sort of a world crisis, that's what we're asking.
And we keep living our life, and we go ahead, and we do this, and then we get punched in the head for no reason. But there's a system that's communicating with us.
Pretty soon it could change to the human function, not just the Jew function. Because if we don't wake up pretty soon, even humans will become redundant in the world.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Okay, listen, enough of that shit. This is a podcast, and we're not going to try to find, we're going to find the solution to anti-Semitism, okay? We're going to stop that right here, right now, from this stinking basement. When we get to the bottom of this, we're going to read from this mystery book, which you're not going to find out about until the end of the series, and we're going to really entertain every perspective. We're not going to say, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that. No, we're going to say everything. Because if we're not going to be able to talk about it, we're not going to be able to solve it. We're going to really grab you in the kishke, and we're going to squeeze until we get something, right? Either a bowel movement or a freaking solution. We want to know what happened 3,500 years ago in Babylon that started this whole mishugas, and we want to finish it here in 2020. That's it. I want to start with the story.
We're in the infant stage of coronavirus.
Early stages. It's just been announced as a pandemic. And the day before, this post came up on Facebook. Friends, something happened today to me that must be shared. 3 exclamation marks. I'm not posting this to promote myself, as one person told me, a quote-unquote hero in any way, but to bring up one of the most dangerous aspects of this coronavirus outbreak, as far as I'm concerned, and that is this. Story starts. I walked into a small store today to buy a protein shake, as I frequently do. A woman walked in and asked, "Is anyone Jewish here? Any Jews here?" She continued to say, "Because I have asthma." And yes, I did open my mouth. It was instinctive and reflexive. I said, as a matter of fact, I am Jewish. This is not a disease of the Jews. People all over the world are being infected with this heinous virus. And then I was punched in my stomach. I'm okay, reported to the police. Not much will be done at this point. My stomach is fine, but I'm emotionally shaken. And guess what? I would do it again, and it's almost so appropriate that this happened on Purim. We need to protect ourselves on every level now. These are very scary times. I know I'm scared.
Why are you reading this to us?
Why am I reading?
Are you an alarmist?
I'm not an alarmist, but I was kind of like watching the corona thing unfold and waiting patiently to see at what point the Jews will be blamed for.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
That thing didn't take that long for the whole thing.
Right. They don't hate us because we're Muslim or we're driving, we're black. Whatever the problem is, they hate us because of Corona. They hate us because of taxes. They hate us because of not taxes. They hate us because of borders.
When something shakes, this is not and I think that's really the difference. I think usually when you see those kind of actions, it's usually a systemic kind of hate. Meaning, it's not like, oh, pull over, you were speeding. No, you were messing up my tax returns. It's always like this, something big. You're bringing, infecting humanity with corona. You're drinking the blood of babies. It's always like the big. It's not like, your dog peed in my backyard. You stinking Jew. No, it's usually something big, systemic, ominous, something out of my control, something. And I find it interesting. Yes, I'm sure there's also like the kind of
the world's foremost problem.
Exactly, right. I'm sure there's also like petty anti-Semitism, kind of like I just saw another tweet. Some coach, in the Netherlands, he was yelling. He was like coaching a bunch of school kids, and it was like picking on one kid as like, "You cancer-ridden Jew," something like that. I was like, yeah, that's just mean, right? But when you're being blamed for the world's problems, it's kind of like, it's like respect, It's
yeah.
It comes it comes with the responsibility. No, I really feel this is different. I know a lot of people are trying to make Jewish hate just like any other hate. There's a movie that came out. I actually you know what? We can actually play that trailer perhaps. Viral. It's called Viral. Incidentally, did you see that?
No.
Oh, interesting. It's called Viral. Anti-Semitism in 4 mutations.
I think it was inevitable that something like this was going to happen in a synagogue.
315, hold a perimeter. We're under fire.
We had 11 dead, shot and killed.
We know people are out there self-radicalizing that want to hurt us.
He's Jewish, anti-Christian, anti-God.
The Jew was created to destroy the white Christian nations.
Pressure has been increasing on the Labour Party and its leader Jeremy Corbyn after claims of anti-Semitism within the party.
That focuses specifically on the state of Israel.
We were not expecting a political anti-Semitic firestorm like we have now.
They call me Jewish bitch.
You are evil, satanic. Leave.
This rogue state.
The intensity of the Soros campaign was just superhuman.
Viktor Orban begot himself a devil, and Soros was his devil.
It's the picture of the laughing Jew. He is there plotting to destroy Hungary.
Il avait de faire sauter tout le magasin.
France is probably where it's all started, but it's clearly spread across Europe.
Breaking news here. Accused white supremacist planned to bomb a synagogue.
4 people killed in a shooting outside a Jewish school.
Anti-Semitism is a conspiracy theory.
It begins with the idea that the Jews are evil.
Christ told the Jews their father was Satan.
That they are motivated by a desire to destroy what is good in society.
If we don't draw a red line in the sand when it comes to anti-Semitism, Muslims will be next, gays will be next, and everyone else who's deemed a minority will be next.
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
This is it. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Oh, it's hate in general. You know, Jews, Muslims, gays.
People hate the Jews.
People hate the Jews. People talk about Jew hatred. But the attitude from among Jews and even world leaders, thought leaders, I mean, you had Clinton there, Tony Blair. The attitude is one of... There's like an agenda, right? Like, oh, it's hate. It spreads like virus. Anti-Semitism corrupts people as if this is some sort of a disease that infects people, and then they get infected, and you have to put them in prison, put them away. And we're saying, wait a second, where is this thing coming from? Why haven't we solved it? Why it's going to erupt every time there's some sort of a world crisis? That's what we're asking, and that's a question we want everyone to ask. This is what the Jew Function podcast is all about, is asking these questions. And pretty soon it could change to the human function, not just the Jew function, because if we don't wake up pretty soon, even humans will become redundant in the world. I don't know, that's my feeling.
There's a heavy silence hanging in the air right now.
Yeah. It's a time of uncertainty. We started this podcast, just thinking we're going to read this book and get into the role of the Jews kind of in an abstract way, more theoretically, figure out the theory behind it. But now it's
like one of those movies where like you start reading the book and then you're in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, I don't even know if we're going to get, how far we're going to get in the book before...
the attack may come before we get to the end of the book.
Yeah, we have to get to the end of the book. But I mean, the hypothesis was made.
Get to the end of the book before they find us.
Yeah, we might have to fast forward through some parts in the book, but...
what do we want to... We're going to read a little bit if we even get to the book today, but what is the, coming out of episode 6 last week, where are we now, and how does this all line up with what's happening in the world? Plus,
the hypothesis, to remind everyone, is saying something very simple. Jews are a nation formed around an ideology of love. Love your friend, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's much deeper than just ethics and morals, right? It's an attempt.
It's a law of
exactly,
nature.
it's an attempt to resemble a law of nature, to be an equivalence of form and resonance with the law of nature, and thus letting this law of love work through you. This is much deeper than simply, let's have a nice little, everybody say hi in the morning when you see your neighbor. No, this is much deeper.
We look at the things that are happening in life and in nature and in all these things as if it's a system communicating with us, not as if we're sitting here and all of a sudden we just get punched in the head for no reason. And then we keep living our life. Okay, now it's calm. Now we build stuff and then we get punched in the head for no reason. Then we keep living our life and we go ahead and we do this and then we get punched in the head for no reason. But there's a system that's communicating with us and we have to understand, we have to feel the system. We have to see what's happening, see what it's doing. All of a sudden the whole world stopped and is self-quarantining.
That's the thing. Exactly. Just like Jews were getting hit on the head, now the world is getting hit on the side of the head. Suddenly the whole world is smacked. Not like one country, one group, you can blame it on somebody. No, this is like suddenly everybody feels that they are under one law of nature. It's interesting. The virus shows that we are mutually infecting one another, but we do it in a negative way. Suddenly, the virus is forcing us to be concerned with the other.
The virus is isolated.
I'm concerned. I have to be concerned with you.
I heard you say that.
Right? How are you doing?
Maybe concerned.
Are you sick? Should I move away? I'm forced to think about you because by thinking about you, I'm somehow caring for me as well.
So that's still a little abstract. I think the first thing that we see from the virus is that everybody has to isolate themselves. First of all, and the connection between us used to be like, I'm going to buy stuff, I'm going to get stuff, I'm going to fly somewhere, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, like all of this doing and buying and stuff. And now it's like, stop, everybody stop, go back home. And then, okay, so now how are we connected to each other? Now I think we get to what you were saying.
Well, now at least we're thinking about it. That's the first thing, that by stopping all this unnecessary distraction, we're forced to think about the meaning of it all and how we are all equally fragile in the eyes of nature and we're equal in the eyes of this general law of nature. And we can't see the purpose yet behind it. We just see some, unexplainable calamity we have to maybe band against. But what we're saying here is nothing is coincidental. Nothing just happens. Everything is, evolving within this system of laws. And when you break a law, you feel it, right? If you fall from too high, you're going to break something. But while you're falling, it seems great. It's like that joke. Someone is falling from the 10th floor and someone's asking him, how's it? What's happening? It's like, well, so far so good. It feels good. But when you meet the ground, then you realize, oh my God, it's gravity. I wasn't paying attention to that law. That's the state of humanity. The virus is one milestone on the way to hitting the ground really hard, and it's forcing us to look at it. And what we're saying here is that Jews play a role, not in spreading the virus, that's a stupid notion, but in being agents of change, agents of connection.
The virus is actually coming from what you would call, quote, God, quote, nature. The virus is just coming at us from some system. We don't know what this system is. We don't know where it's coming, whether it's a hoax or whether it's this. It's affecting everyone. One way or another, it's reaching everyone. It's coming at us somehow. It's coming at all of humanity somehow. Now, how are we going to respond back? And the way that we all live, so separated from each other, so caring about ourselves.
As long as nothing really terrible happens, both to Jews and to non-Jews, everybody kind of goes about doing what they're doing. Some pay attention, some don't. Some hate Jews, some don't. Some have some feelings in the back of their mind or whatever. Jews have some feelings about it. So everybody kind of goes around doing their thing. As soon as something like that happens, it forces you to think, right? It forces you to consider, to evaluate your values, your life, what you've been doing, the systems we have built as humans. And this thought process is the beginning of change.
If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make a change.
And even you see it in Jewish history, by the way, in the little excerpt we're about to read today, that as soon as, remember last week we came out of Babylon, Cyrus said, go to Israel, right? You're free. People, they united, story of Purim, right? There was Haman cast a lot to destroy the Jews.
So they finally united.
They unite.
And when
Cyrus
they united, they were,
right?
They were freed. They were somehow, the forces arranged themselves and the leader decided, now before we wanted to imprison you, enslave you, whatever, and now we set you free.
Right. Look at that, page 42.
In accord with our nature, as soon as Cyrus sent us to Israel as a free people, we began to argue over the building of the temple and the nature of our restored sovereignty. But one way or another, the temple was eventually built. But more importantly, for a brief period of time, unity was restored. And that period was a beautiful one in the pain-stricken history of our people.
Right.
Keep going.
No, read the one right after. Basically they go back. Hold on, before you read it. So they go back. They build the second temple, and we know we talked about second temple is an expression. Forget about the temple. Nobody needs to build a temple, but it's an expression of unity. Just the fact that a group of people manages to unite to carry out such an undertaking.
I used to always go see this band called the Grateful Dead. I don't know if you've heard of them, but I don't know if I should be embarrassed to say that, whatever. No. Anyway, so I used to go see them all the time, but most of the experience for me was I loved going to the shows because, growing up like in regular suburbia, it was such a shock to see this. Like people from all over the country would arrive at these shows. You'd have an extra 10,000 people who came to the event who didn't even have a ticket to go inside, and they were cooking out. This was before cell phones and everything. They were cooking outside, playing hacky sack outside, exchanging music. Like it was this way, like this Babylonian marketplace kind of thing. When I learned about the kind of the culture around the temple, it blew my mind. I got so excited. It was like a couple times a year, everyone from everywhere would come, and there would be music in the streets, and nobody, the stories say nobody had to sleep in the street. Everybody was brought inside. Everyone was fed. Everyone gathered together. They brought, everybody ate. Everybody played. An unbelievable kind of unity experience was happening at this place.
That's exactly that. I think, Seth, we're at this point in time, although we have to cross a certain gap here, and we will circle back to it, but I think now, maybe today, it's great. Let's read those few excerpts that talk about how it could be like, right? What can that unity feel like? What can that feeling of togetherness be like? Because people are right now, they're feeling the opposite. They're freaking out. They're going into isolation. The connection between us is a negative connection. The virus is exposed that we are interconnected, but in a negative way. You can kill me. I can kill you. You can kill my grandma. All that. That's how we're feeling it right now. And it's in a sense, an invitation to consider that connection and to reverse it. And what we can get from that, and especially if Jews will lead the way. Let's read from this paragraph.
The Antiquity of the Jews
in this book. Yeah,
Flavius
exactly.
Josephus.
Yeah.
Okay. So Josephus writes that the pilgrims would make acquaintance, maintained by conversing together and by seeing and talking with one another, and so renewing the recollections of this union.
Keep going.
Once they entered Jerusalem, the pilgrims were greeted with open arms. The townsfolk let them into their homes and treated them as family. And there was always room for everyone.
Always.
The Mishnah relishes this rare camaraderie. All the craftsmen in Jerusalem would stand before them and ask about their well-being. Our brothers, men of such and such a place, have you come in peace? And the flute would play before them until they arrived at the Temple Mount. Additionally, all the material needs of every person who came to Jerusalem were met in full. One did not say to one's friend, I could not find an oven on which to roast an offering in Jerusalem, or I could not find a bed to sleep in Jerusalem. Even better, the unity and warmth among the Hebrews projected outward and became a role model for the neighboring nations. It's incredible.
Yeah, and this one, let's just read this one. It's really nice.
The philosopher Philo of Alexandria portrayed the pilgrimage as a festival. Thousands of people from thousands of cities.
Yeah, picture this.
Some by land... Amazing. Some by land and some by sea, from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south, would come each festival to the temple as if to a common shelter, a safe haven protected from the storms of life, with hearts filled with good hopes They would take this vital vacation with sanctity and with glory to God. And they make friendships with people they had not met before. And in the merging of the hearts, they would find the ultimate proof of unity. So good.
So good. Keep going. There's more.
Philo was not the only one who admired what he saw. Those festivals of bonding served as a way for Israel to be, for the first time since they were given the vocation of, a light to the nations. The book's Sifrei Devarim tells how Gentiles would go up to Jerusalem and see Israel and say, "It is becoming to cling only to this nation." This era in the history of our nation is probably the only time where we could see a living proof that the antidote to Jew hatred was not assimilation, but rather enhanced internal union. Historian Paul
That's
Johnson,
important. Not to try to be like everyone, but to really lead the way on how to connect, how to be together. This is phenomenal. And the last bit, Paul Johnson.
Paul Johnson writes, in the years 400 to 200 BC, those are the lost centuries of Jewish history.
The lost centuries.
There were no great events or calamities they chose to record. You know, if you look at the converse, it's like everything that's been written has been about like some terrible thing that happened.
Right. So what is this? What does he conclude?
The only time our history is not recorded is when everything's going well.
Yeah. Perhaps they were happy, he concludes.
Perhaps they were happy.
And then the Book of Zohar.
Book of Zohar. Hine Matovu Manaim.
Right.
The Book of Zohar describes succinctly and clearly the process that Israel went through. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to also sit together. These are the friends as they sit together and are not separated from each other. At first, they seem like people at war wishing to kill one another. Then they return to being in brotherly love. And you friends who are here as you were in fondness and love before, henceforth you will also not part from one another, and by your merit there will be peace in the world. Indeed, being a light unto the nations could not have been more evident than at that time.
You know,
and hopefully at this time.
I hope this will...
It's in our hands.
It's in our hands, because I really hope that we can...
To love each other.
Yeah, we can remind people that we have the power to do it. Jewish people we just have to jog our memory. We have that capacity to really go all out. Really, now that the virus has removed the need to be concerned with material possessions and retail shopping and travel and sports and Hollywoods and this and that and the other. Not that they were evil in and of themselves or anything, wrong about it, but they were just a veil onto this thing that can awaken between us. And now, I really do feel that this is an opportunity for exactly people like the Jews to step up to that void. This is actually the good parts in the mystery book. Then later it gets a little more
beautiful.
It gets a little hairy. Later on.
What I want to say here is that all of these things that have happened, these historic things, you can go through our history and each one is another, Greek, Babylon, Rome, Persia, like each one is like this, another wheel turning around, like click, click. Like it's like if people are blaming the Jews again, so, it's another one. This is another one that's happening. And this time we have the ability, like in Purim, they had the ability, the Maccabees, you could say, had the ability. There were times when, with Cyrus, like we just read, they had the ability. There's these abilities for the people to come together and it changes the fate. Well, what we're trying to do broadcast here is to really spread it in a way that it wasn't able to be spread before and change our fate, and change it in a big way, in a big, very big qualitative way. It's like in our hands now.
But in simple terms, it's the inner inclination towards the well-being of the other, care for the other, almost as if they are more important than me. Right. We're not asking anyone to put their lives...
You keep going so sublime on me. I mean, I see a virus, I see people staying home from school, and I see people trying to figure out their mortgage and stuff like that. You're talking 5 levels beyond what I can understand.
Because if you want to get to the moon, you have to shoot for the stars.
We switched roles. I thought we started out. I was the dreamy guy, and you were the more grounded guy. And then we switched roles.
I'm just looking into nature. I'm not looking that far ahead. I think the big leap here of the imagination that people need to make, and I think nowadays it's becoming easier to make it, is as follows. Everybody agrees we exist in a system. No question there. We exist in a system of nature, system of laws. Various laws are operating on us. Some we know, some we don't. We try as best as we can to be in some sort of accordance, right, with the system, not to get hurt. That's kind of human nature, right? How do I make the most out of my situation, kind of? What this virus is exposing is some sort of an imbalance between us and nature. I don't even know what exactly it is, but I see that we are out of balance. I see that we are put under pressure. The leap here is as follows. Some people would say, well, it just happened, right? It's accidental. It just happens. Stuff just happens. But that's just like my son saying stuff happens, right? Yeah, it just fell. It just broke.
They just hate us. They're bad. That's why they hate us.
They just hate us.
It just is.
Yeah.
I'm just walking down the street and you just punched me in the head.
Yeah, this just blew up. The tree just fell on my car. Stuff happens. Why? I don't know.
I don't know.
But that's kind of a naive statement.
And as long as it's not happening, then I just go back to living my normal life and
thinking I'm in control.
Whatever.
And then when stuff happens, I don't know what happened. This is naive. This is naive. I mean, even talk to any scientist. They'll tell you that nothing just happens. They'll tell you that there's an explanation for every phenomenon. They even had to go and come up with a theory of a dark energy, a dark matter that somehow holding bits and pieces of the universe in place, even though there's no proof for it, except something had to be there. Something doesn't just happen. There's always something pushing, pulling, right? So the leap is to say that all those laws are part of an even higher law, sort of a higher direction that nature is moving in. Okay, let's put it this way.
Well, what does it mean to be a light unto the nations then?
To be a light unto the nations is to first tell people that stuff doesn't just happen, that there are laws, that the one law we've been consistently missing out on is the law of unity. This love, this care for one another.
It's like we reached up, we grabbed a light, we tasted some light, and then we turn around and hand it to everyone else. It sounds conceited, but it sounds like being a pipeline, basically.
Yeah. Well, that's where we're going to get a lot of negative comments in the comment section because people say...
what am I supposed to do? Not say that, though?
No.
I agree. It's not my words.
We say it. This is where we say it. There's no other way but to say it, and I think people are developing an ear for it. At the end of the day, people feel stuff, and I think the fact that I just heard a friend today talk about it, how everybody moved from living in their own personal script, where I was the hero of my movie and I was fighting the bad guys on the way to get my my home or my love of my life or my company on Wall Street or whatever my hero goal was. It kept clashing with other heroes' scripts, and when our interests met, then we would be great friends, and if they somehow conflicted, then we had to maybe fight, or maybe I had to kill you, whatever it is. That was the way the world was moving, and now suddenly all the scripts are united. There's one common enemy and there's one common humanity, and we have to communicate and we have to trust each other. We have to do all those things. And I know it sounds hard right now when all I care about is how do I not get sick and I keep all the infected people away from my door.
There's also people who think it's just hype, by the way. But okay, I understand that I see what you're seeing. I just want to acknowledge those listeners out there who think it's still hype. Fine, but
that's okay.
Regardless of hype or not hype, there's something happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's on every news.
Hype or not hype, airlines are closing, hotels are closing.
Right, right.
The government is going to postpone the
whether
tax
you think
season.
This politician's an idiot or not, or whatever something is happening.
Yeah, I think that in itself is an interesting commentary, right? The fact that a virus whose mortality rates are less than an average war, it's a world phenomenon in motion. Right. That's it. It's moving.
It happened.
It's moving. People are being laid off. pensions, rent, as you said, IRS, industries, trade, everything is grinding to
Airlines,
a halt.
hotels, cruises,
sports
stocks,
games, Hollywood
sports
blockbusters. Right. They didn't release James Bond. Oh my God. It's like suddenly everything becomes insignificant.
Like the basketball game is going to be played with an empty stadium.
Yeah, exactly. Soon without, it's going to be played virtually on a computer. We're trying to look at the forces at work. We're not trying to find who played a role, at instigating what, but rather the forces at work. The forces at work, and where is our place of choice? What can I do about it? What can I do about it? I can change my attitude. I can change the way I think of the world and of everyone living in it. And I shouldn't wait for a virus to make me feel that I depend on everyone else. I should try to do it before the virus gets here. If the book is telling us anything.
So from what I understand, remember, so Ptolemy II had an advisor or whatever who said, oh, remember, didn't your dad give you like 100,000 Jewish slaves?
Right.
I think the story goes something like that. He's like, why don't you give back the 100,000 slaves? And then maybe the high priest would be into, coming in and telling you about this. It's like all of a sudden something happens and the Jews are free again.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know about this. Something changed again.
That's always a thing. There are bigger forces at work here. I think it's okay to admit that. You don't have to be called a religious person, because every scientist will tell you the same.
You hear from the book. He goes, and every single Jewish slave was freed, whether they were brought to Egypt by Alexander the Great or at any other time, and that the king's treasury would recompense every slave owner. So if you let your Jewish slave go, the Egyptian government would give you money.
Exactly.
For your loss. Within a week, every Jew in Egypt was a free person.
Exactly. Exactly. And then, and by the way, just since you kind of delved into history. That started a process whereby these 70 sages were sent down to Egypt, and they taught.
Right. So he said he wrote the letter to Judah, the high priest, and said, "I set free all of these slaves. Would you? And now I want to translate the Hebrew scriptures."
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So Judah replied quickly and said, "Let me help you out with that."
And he sent those people down, and
he sent 70.
He sat them down, and for a week he interrogated them about every aspect of political rule. Every political question he had, philosophical question. He made him give.
So the head of Egypt had 70 of these
sages
that Judah sent down there from the temple.
Right.
And he asked them everything about how to what?
And about everything. Questioning them about every aspect of life. He found such a force of beauty in these men's words. His philosopher writes, Menedemus, he was in awe of such beauty, right? And then they explain all the problems, and then he asked them to translate actually the scriptures for them, because again the philosopher says these wise men were a feast of words full of wit and weight. It sounds a little aloof, but the point is that this started a process of translation that
interesting here also
brought the Bible right to the world.
Right, exactly. So this is how the wisdom of Moses, the wisdom of Abraham, these people from Babylon gets into the world, is through this womanizing Jewish slave owning guy who wants to pull it down and then spread it out. He reaches up to me tell me everything. You pull, I want to know how you do everything, and then
and then just to end with a little bit of just sprinkle some fairy dust on top. When he sent them back, and then when he brought them again, and he brought these 72 people, sages, elders, placed them in 72 separate rooms, and he asked them, without telling them in advance what he wants to do, he then asked every one of them to write for him, meaning to translate the law of Moses, the Bible, right?
The Bible.
Each one of them did it. Basically,
you know how I feel about these fairy tales.
I know. It's okay. I mean, they sound nice, so we go with it. Listen, it's written. He placed them in his room, in these separate rooms, told them to translate the rooms, and then when they brought back, when it was time to put the pencils down, he collected the papers, and they had translated exactly the same thing. And if they made any changes to the scriptures so it would fit the translation, it was the same change across all of them. It's just another small example of those stories that have been circulating since antiquity about this people and how when we play this particular role, sages of the law of nature, we are being respected, admired, supported. Seemingly everything's
and it clothes naturally in each kind of people. There's no problem between Jewish people and people of other nations, including a powerful womanizing pharaoh. Any nation, it doesn't matter, because it clothes. It's just the nation of how to connect. I mean, it's just the wisdom of how to connect, and it fits every nation, however every nation is. It just shines a light on everyone.
Yeah, and this chapter ends by quoting again Paul Johnson, saying that this story of those sages being brought and then returned to Jerusalem with a letter saying that they should be given leave if they want to come back to Egypt and talk to him, and everything should be taken care of and all that. He says this perhaps is what...
beginning of political lobbying.
Yeah. No, this is what...
he brings them back and he starts giving them women and alcohol.
Right. Almost.
And then you have Washington, D.C. lobbyists.
That was...
This is where Jewish lawyers came from. From the guys who went back to Ptolemy.
Exactly. Perhaps. But
no,
maybe this is what he meant when he said that this was the Jews being made a pilot for humanity to emulate. So that's a question. I think this is where we end. In the next chapter, in our next episode, we are going to go into the more hairy kind of fallout from Hellenism and all the stuff that was going on there. You know, after
when the priests, the sages, actually did mix. With the cultures in a way of not being a light onto the cultures, right? But that's the mingling.
The mingling, the assimilation, all that stuff. When we're not basically adhering to that law, so it's going to be a hairy story.
Hairy, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're going to go through it together. Brace yourself. It's not going to be kid friendly. If this podcast has ever been, but it will be.
Yeah, I mean, there's millions killed and things like that.
Well, don't spoil it. We'll get to it. I think it's nice because I think I think it fits. We started today with a very nice, very kind of sweet picture of what it could be, and then as the world reels around the virus panic, we can also talk about what could go wrong. So by the time.
And that's what the book is showing us, how it does go wrong if we are not connected.
Exactly.
It goes wrong again and again in the same way,
exactly.
In the same predictable way.
Exactly. So that will be the lesson that we'll try to learn together.
Shalom, my friend from New Jersey.
Yes, the Jew Function. Of course, listen, subscribe, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Jew Function, YouTube, the Jew Function. It's all the Jew Function. I'm still in Israel. You're still in New Jersey. We hope that we're all going to make the right choice.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.